Oh, what a day it is right here in Jacksonville, Florida. Today is Thursday, March 18th, the day after St. Patty's Day. I am Jonathan Morris Schwartz, and welcome to my Manic Brain program, Sex, Politics, and Everlasting Life. For those of you who are just joining me, let me give you a little background. My name is Jonathan Morris Schwartz. I'm 54, almost 55 years old. I live in Ocala, Florida. I received in my college years a degree in mass communications, moved to New York, worked briefly for CBS television, went back to school so I could have a backup and make a living, got a master's degree at the City College of New York in Harlem, took courses at Hunter College, Brooklyn College, and received a master's degree in 1992 in speech-language pathology. Worked for 2 years in Co-op City with children with autism in the New York City public school system. Enjoyed it very much, but then moved to Florida in 1994 and have worked in Florida as a speech-language pathologist ever since. Never lost my thirst and desire for writing, for broadcasting, for sharing thoughts, and the genesis of this program and the topic, My Manic Brain, Sex, Politics, and Everlasting Life, is as follows. First, when I use the word manic, I'm using it with a small m. I'm not speaking specifically of bipolar or any pathology or psychological condition or diagnosis. I personally believe that I have some manic thoughts, some potentially manic behavior, but I'm fortunate, I suppose, in that my lows are not particularly low. My baseline of emotion is generally sunny and happy and content, with fairly wild bursts of sometimes unmistakable and undefinable burst of joy and happiness and euphoria. And that's what I explore almost every day on my newsletter, which is at Substack. It's jonathanschwartz.substack.com, and you can subscribe. You just put your email address in. It is a free newsletter. Substack is designed for writers to build their audience. Eventually, the goal for Substack and the author is that you have a subscriber, a paid subscriber option. I don't have that many people right now. Should it ever grow the way I hope it will, perhaps that will happen. The other option is some people continue to write a newsletter or daily essay or daily article for free on Substack, and then as they grow for $5 a month or $10 a month, whatever it is that they want to charge, they offer special content or special series, but still continue to offer free work. I'm just thrilled that people are enjoying what I'm producing and what I'm sharing, and would love to hear from any of you with comments or similar stories or thoughts, opinions, commentary on what I'm discussing. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus within the three baskets briefly, the sex, politics, and everlasting life. And that's how I structure most of the days, where I come up with a topic or idea, social commentary. Today will be fairly straightforward. On these channels, I avoid outright overt crudeness or language, but I also make it clear that these are young adult and adult-oriented topics. It's not that children can't listen, but some of what we discuss in the basket of sex in particular falls into adult-oriented information. So under the term of desire, today's Substack newsletter on jonathanschwartzsubstack.com is entitled Desire, Chirping Dolphins, and Cerebral Fantasy. The exploration for me today is how much we don't understand and underplay and undervalue and under-examine the role of desire, of potential. oftentimes we think of reality in terms of desire. And it's not always sexual. Sometimes we desire someone platonically. We enjoy them for non-physical or romantic reasons. We enjoy being with them. We look forward to socializing with them. We desire them. Other times we desire someone in a romantic manner. Sometimes we desire someone for everything, for their mind, body, and soul. What I find fascinating, and I explore today, is how the thought, the metacognitive aspect of desire affects our disposition and frame of mind and happiness. So, for example, there are many times with me, and I think with most men and women, where we enjoy people in our lives, whether we're single or married. If we're honest, we are stimulated in desire and have thoughts about many people. What I'm not saying is that we all go around like animals, drooling every time we walk through a public space and see attractive people, and therefore have some kind of Pavlovian response where we either can't control our thoughts or our actions, and that's hence the expression, he acts like a dog. We're human. We're intelligent. Our mind controls our body, but who controls our mind? We do, as far as we know. And I find that, for me personally, as the Beautiful Mind movie said, the diet of the mind, and in the newsletter I used a slightly crude expression, a diet of the genitalia, meaning it's, in my judgment, perfectly fine to have impure thoughts. Now, we could get into the religion. There are some religions that believe, according to their Bible or their holy text, that even an impure thought is a sin. That if you're walking through the mall and you see attractive people and your mind starts to wander towards the idea of romance or kissing them, or you envision something impure, that you are sinning. I disagree with that, in the sense that we all have an animalistic side to us. We are animals. We are biological. And oftentimes, at least for me, the controlled allowing of my manic brain to explore what I'm calling cerebral fantasy is a healthy part of living a fulfilling, satisfying, happy life. The article goes a little bit more in depth and discusses aspects of desire. The topic of the day is desire. How do we handle it? There is no doubt that desire can be a blessing or a curse, depending on how your mind controls your body and who and how controls your mind. And that's the food for thought on that topic, number one, desire. In terms of politics, I read today a fantastic, wonderful article. Talk about thought-provoking, talk about controversial technology, in the New York Times Magazine by Kushmir Hill. I hope I'm saying that correct. And it's entitled, Your Face is Not Your Own. And it's pretty in-depth. It discusses a technological company. You read it. I'm not going to regurgitate it for you. But the gist of it is that we are getting to a point with facial recognition, because our images are everywhere on Facebook and Instagram and all over the internet. And it was surveillance. Whenever we walk through public places, we're being surveilled by camera. And therefore, to come up with one aspect of it, the quote-unquote positive aspect, the good side of this facial recognition is it can become very valuable. It is, and it will become, if it's universally accepted and it gets through the court systems, it will be valuable in identifying criminals, particularly sexual predators. They gave an example in the article of a sexual predator who would not have been found and arrested and jailed. So were it not for facial recognition technology. So clearly, criminals that are caught through this technology and stopped from doing harm again, particularly sexual predators with young children, is universally a good thing, a positive utilization of the technology. But the downsides are pretty profound as well. Let's talk about a few of them. First, let me go general. Before the internet, before we had all the surveillance, before cell phones, our right to privacy was pretty solid in the sense that we weren't being watched. Unless we were a celebrity or had some sort of recognition through being a public person, a politician or something of that nature, if we were just an everyday Joe, nobody really knew who we were outside of our family and immediate community. And therefore, we were given a lot of societal slack in the sense of, for example, and please don't take me wrong, I'm not condoning shoplifting, I'm not condoning making an awkward pass at someone, I'm not condoning misbehavior. But many young people, oftentimes 3, 4, 5 years old, sometimes 8, sometimes 10 or 12 years old, will shoplift, will grab something and walk out of the store. That's wrong. It shouldn't happen. There has to be a learning lesson made out of that. If it's someone older than 8, 10, or 12, perhaps they should be even arrested. Shoplifting is a serious crime. Please don't get me wrong. But when it was done, particularly with young children, the parent would see it was stolen and would either make them return it or turn it into a lesson and scare the living daylights out of them and explain that they could be arrested and go to jail. But it was a private matter. Now, wherever you are, whatever you do, publicly, you're going to be found out. You're going to be taped. And that tape recording of you at any age, but particularly a young age, will be forever recorded, forever available, and potentially used as future either blackmail against you or just be available forever. You know, the internet is forever. Other issues. We now, with the surveillance cameras everywhere, even in our own homes, with the ability for people to plant cameras, even in our own bedrooms, it's fairly easy to catch someone doing what we would, not that many years ago, expect to be kept private. I mean, use your imagination. Imagine if somebody plants a camera in your bedroom and you cheat on your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, or you masturbate, or you watch porn, and those moments that you assume are private are recorded, and somebody has access to that. Imagine you get a phone call a month later from someone who says, I have pictures of you cheating on your spouse or masturbating or watching porn or whatever activity it is that you'd rather not the world know and see. You can easily be blackmailed. You could be framed. It's a real serious problem. So that article I highly recommend, and it is really something interesting to debate. it is a huge loss with privacy. The other part that I thought of today is, every young man, and sometimes young women as well, will say something stupid or that has the wrong meaning or that they regret. Words, not actions. Or a young man or woman will make an awkward pass, will try to kiss someone or hug someone or grope someone. All wrong. Well, the kiss, who knows? But my point is that all of these human behaviors that fall short of being criminal, might be unethical, might be uncomfortable, but are private and could be, in my judgment, and was up until technology took away every shred of our privacy, handled behind closed doors. There was an ability for people to learn from their mistakes without being mortified, humiliated, in some cases arrested. And that's the fear. My fear is that we're losing the ability to be human, that we're just inching closer and closer to becoming robots, or to end up having different communities of people based on their social behaviors and status. It's already happening in some countries where from a very early age they're stamped as being redeemable or not in some ways, or positive or negative society. And I hope we're not going to end up with different societies and different sort of camps, literally, of people who are forcibly separated from society based on their humanity. And then finally, I want to talk about, under the realm and basket of politics, on a prior program I discussed the fact that we are in fascinating financial economic times, because up until just the pandemic, up until a couple years ago, frankly, we were all about, well, there's a lot of wealth in a few hands, but it makes me want to strive for it more. Back in the 80s and 90s, when you had shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and Dynasty, people watched it and they weren't jealous per se. They were more, I want that. And in this country, the American dream is possible, and if we strive and work hard, we can all get it. But as of a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, that quaint notion is gone. I mean, I think even the most ambitiously optimistic capitalist recognizes that the game is over in terms of who controls the country. We talk about the one percenters. It's probably the 0.1% of the one percenters, the multi-billionaires that control the politicians, that control the big corporations, that control Wall Street, that control the Fed. We get it now. We learned that from the 2008 TARP bailouts and bank and Wall Street bailouts. I won't regurgitate that, but there was something that we learned profoundly back then. And what the pandemic did was, as more and more people got unemployed, as more jobs were eliminated, many of which are not coming back. I mean, all of the secretarial jobs, receptionist jobs, many of the lower income positions, bartenders, waiters, tourism-oriented jobs, some of which will come back, but some will not. A lot of companies now, including the fast food companies, the retailers, even the movie theaters. I went to see a movie a few weeks ago, and they don't have, there are no people at all you must use the technological kiosk or you do not get to see a movie. No movie for you. And there is an employee there to help navigate it, but I was chatting with her, and I'm like, you're not going to be around long. She's like, well, at some point people will get the hang of it and they won't need me. So technology is displacing people. We know that. And so under Trump and now under Biden, there was this implicit and now explicit understanding that it's time to open up the money printing valves to everyone. It's time now to provide what we're calling stimulus. I call it universal stimulus income to as many people as possible. we're drawing boundaries now. People who make up to 80,000, people who, if you are a head of household, you can make up to 120,000. If you're a married couple, you can make 150,000. These are boundaries, and think about this for a minute. This past year, if you made 75,000 and ended up getting another 10 or 15 or $20,000 in stimulus money between the Trump bills in Congress that passed and the recent $1.9 trillion Biden bill that passed, and it turns out that your boss wants to pay you $81,000 this year, but you're thinking, you know what? I won't get stimulus. I'll be cut out of all the future stimuluses. We're going to have people who go to their boss and say, look, pay me a few thousand less because I'll be considered poor enough at that point to qualify for the free, what I call free funny money. Don't get me wrong. I have very mixed feelings about this. I mean, we've crossed the Rubicon. It's too late now. I mean, back in 2008, I was hoping that we would have some sense. We would punish those that created the housing bubble. Some of the Wall Street bankers would have to pay. No one paid a price at the top. They just got richer and richer, and now they're getting even richer. So basically, I believe that this stimulus, this universal stimulus, is not going away. And I had a funny thought last night that I myself, Jonathan Morris Schwartz, with my manic brain, I'll bet you $1 that I could run for president and win by just pivoting every conversation and question back to promising never-ending stimulus. Here's an example. So if a reporter says, so Jonathan Schwartz, you're running for president, what are your thoughts on China? I'd say something like, well, it's important that we're tough with China, that we have fair trade practices, but we also have to be realistic and try to forge a partnership that works for both countries. And it's also important to know that every American receives a baseline stimulus income, and we are going to continue under the Jonathan Morris Schwartz presidency to make sure that every American receives enough stimulus money to continue their ability to pay their bills, enjoy the American dream, and to keep the system fair, so it's not just the billionaires and almost trillionaires that are getting all the money. It's the common man, it's the average Joe that will continue to get stimulus money from birth to death. Next question, please. Okay, what do you think about immigration? We need to be tough on immigration, we need to have strong borders, but we also need to be compassionate. And you know what else we have to be compassionate about? Making sure that it's not just the top tenth of 1%, those multi-billionaires that are stealing all the money from the Federal Reserve and the banks and Wall Street and corporations and getting away with financial murder. Oh no. Under the Jonathan Morris Schwartz presidency, I want to make this clear. I'm here for you, that couple and family that are making $50,000 or $75,000 and struggling. And all of a sudden, the tires burst on your car, or the engine goes, or the transmission goes, or an appliance goes, or the air or the heat go, and you don't got the money. It's only fair that we continue to make sure that working Americans have a safety net. If the system now is going to spoil the billionaires, I hardly see it as spoiling to give a few $1,000s to people who are working their fingers to the bone to try and keep this great country going and growing. Next question, please. And on and on and on. You know, even the tough questions, even questions on abortion, even questions. You know, I believe in a woman's right to choose, but it's a very difficult topic. We have to find middle ground where we can. But you know where else we have to find middle ground? On making sure that our finances don't funnel upward to the people who least deserve it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just pivot every question, no matter what it is, to I'm going to make sure that every few months the United States of America government, the Federal Reserve, is going to dump thousands of dollars into your checking account. Period. Vote for me. Does anyone see how a politician can do anything but that now? I mean, do you think we're going to elect someone who says the opposite in a couple years? Republican or Democrat. Do you think someone can get elected now by saying this is ridiculous, we're printing too much money, the debt's going to be $30 trillion, inflation's going to be out of control, interest rates are not supposed to stay zero forever, the asset prices are going up, so the rich are getting richer, and there's no way that anybody can afford these homes as they go up, we're locked out of stocks, we're locked out of homes, the rich are just going to get infinitely richer? There's no way that that fiscal conservatism, that capitalism, the way that I grew up knowing it, where you fail, whether you are a multi-billionaire or whether you're a $10 an hour employee or whether you're a new startup business, you fail or succeed based on the market. Not anymore. I mean, with all the shadow companies, with the fact that these large companies, I would have mentioned their names, we know the ones that pay no taxes. We know the corporations that are effectively zombie corporations that just keep borrowing so that at 0% interest, that just keep taking on more and more debt endlessly and have no viability. They have no real viability any more than the closed small businesses that were forced out because of them. So the politics of stimulus money, what's the end game? The end game is relatively clear, and that is we're going to print so much money that it's going to be up to the rest of the world, number one, how the dollar will be valued, whether the dollar will remain the currency of the world. Inflation, it's going to be a while because we're tinkering around now. The Federal Reserve and our politicians are so clever with numbers and algorithms and bullshit stretching of any kind of financial truths that I think it could be decades. Some people think it's just a couple years, but I think it could be a couple decades before it all collapses, before we're printing so much money that, $5,000 now getting dumped in someone who makes $50,000 a year's checking account makes a big difference. But it's going to come to a point where you're going to have to put 10,000, and then it's going to be 20,000, and then it's going to be 100,000, and at some point, $1 million isn't going to make a difference in somebody's checking account. When that time comes, who knows? Some food for thought. Thank you so much for listening to Jonathan Morris Schwartz, My Manic Brain, Sex, Politics, and Everlasting Life. Please read my daily newsletter on Substack.com, jonathanschwartz.substack.com. Ladies and gentlemen, what a day it is. Have a great day, everybody.